So Nancy Landry was specifically questioned in the Senate Governmental Affairs Committee here in the last session. Senator Blake McGuez said, "You are committed to the fact, I just want to make sure we have this on the record, that assuming we go forward with electronic voting machines, there's not going to be one component part in whatever machine vendor you use that is manufactured in a foreign country. Can you commit to that?" And she said yes. So my question to you, Colonel Reynolds, is there any current electronic voting system manufacturer on the market that does not derive parts from foreign countries?
No. And all of that is going to come out. You're going to see that in the next few weeks. You're going to see, in my opinion, you're going to see a report that's going to come out that will completely document the things that I've just said. And it will be very in-depth about the vulnerabilities that these machines have, the parts that exist in them, and the fact that there's no way, absolutely, to know we have a fair election. There's no way. And so we have to go to a system that's completely transparent and open. And the only way to do that is a hand-marked paper ballot. All of that is hand-counted.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again on the State of Freedom.
The State of Freedom is a listener-supported podcast. We're committed to pursuing the truth about policymaking, decisions, and situations in Louisiana and at the national level that stand to impact our freedoms.
Please become a monthly supporter of the State of Freedom at freedomstate.us as we continue to expand the voice of liberty across Louisiana and beyond.
If you're looking to invest in physical precious metals or convert your 401k to a precious metals-backed IRA, please consider making your investment with our trusted partner, MetalStacks. Their prices regularly beat the big sites and they have no credit card fees or minimums. Shipping is free for orders over $500. Just visit metalstacks.com/dwalker or get there from our website, freedomstate.us. If you're interested in the IRA conversion, drop me a message at Danielle at freedomstate.us and I can get you connected with their white glove service. Welcome to the State of Freedom. It is Tuesday, September 16th at 10 a.m. Central. I'm Danielle Walker and I'm joined by my friend and co-host, Chris Alexander. We are coming to you live on Voice of the People, TV and radio network, X, Rumble, YouTube, and Facebook. Wherever you're watching, give us a like, give us a thumbs up. It helps us out. Share it. Give us a Rumble rant if you're on Rumble and comment in the chat. We want to hear from you. If you're joining us for the first time, or if you've been with us for a while, I want to just share what we're about. We're about telling the truth. We're about displaying courage in what we say and what we do, and we're about taking action according to the truth. And so if any of those things resonate with you, welcome. If they don't resonate with you, maybe they will by the end of today's show. Joining us today in courage and in truth is Colonel Conrad Reynolds. He's a retired U.S. Army intelligence officer who's fighting for election integrity, and he's host of the weekly show, The Kernel of Truth. Welcome, Colonel, to the show. We're so honored to have you with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. And let me get into the scripture of the day. It is Philippians chapter 1, verse 27 through 30. And it says, this is the Passion Translation. It says, whatever happens, and it's Apostle Paul writing to the church at Philippi, and he was in prison at this time. It says, whatever happens, keep living your lives based on the reality of the gospel of Christ, which reveals him to others. Then when I come to see you or hear good reports of you, I'll know that you stand united in one spirit and one passion, celebrating together as conquerors in the faith of the gospel. And then you will never be shaken or intimidated by the opposition that rises up against us. For your courage will only prove as a sure sign from God of their coming destruction, and that you have found a new life. For God has graciously given you the privilege not only to believe in Christ, but also to suffer for him. For you have been called by him to endure the conflict in the same way I have endured it. For you know, I'm not giving up. And Paul was, like I said, Paul was writing this letter to the Philippians from prison. He was imprisoned for preaching the gospel of Christ Jesus' kingdom. And as I think back over the last couple of days, obviously the assassination of Charlie Kirk has been so just shocking, and it's challenged me personally. I'm sure it's challenging you. It's challenged me to clarify why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's challenged me to cut the things out of my life that are not advancing the purpose that God's put in my heart, which is to speak the truth, to live with bold courage, to take action, and to encourage action that changes the world that we're living in. I don't know about y'all, but I feel like a fierceness has risen up inside of me even more strongly than before, defiance against evil, and an unwavering commitment to the truth, which is firstly the gospel of our King Jesus, and secondly, the truth and the reality of the world around us. So let me pray an impartation over everyone watching and listening. I just pray that the Lord will bless you, that he will strengthen you, that he will clarify your calling and embolden you to do it with power, come what may, that you would be committed to living on purpose, in purpose, and that giving up would never be an option. In the name of Jesus.
In the name
Yeah.
of Jesus,
Amen.
amen. That is incredibly powerful. I've struggled, as you said, Danielle, we've all struggled with what happened this past week, and I'm still struggling with it. I'm still struggling with the problem of evil in the world and reconciling it with God's providence and God's grace, which is really a classic struggle that even the greatest Christian theologians have had, to try to reconcile to some degree what we know is God's infinite goodness, yet the presence of this type of evil in the world. But I know that he has a plan, and I do believe that good comes out of it. And I think we're already starting to see it. I think that this is probably the defining moment in the history of our republic right now, because I think people across the country are rising up and understanding finally what is at stake, and specifically the character of the enemy that we have to defeat. There should be no doubt in anybody's mind at this point about what we have to do. And someone who has been doing that, relentlessly and consistently is Colonel Reynolds, who, as you said, is a longtime military veteran, decorated combat veteran, by the way, and also served for a long time in military intelligence. There's no one better to have on our show today. And Colonel Reynolds, it's such an honor to have you with us for a little while today on the State of Freedom, sir.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's my first time on the show, and I've heard a lot of great things about you guys, so thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
One of the things, the overwhelming tendency in my own heart is not particularly proud of it, but it is the initial spirit that welled up inside of me was a spirit of vengeance, a spirit of retaliation, a spirit of just going scorched earth in every possible way on these people for what they did. And my initial reaction, even though I'm trained as a constitutional lawyer and I understand the importance of free speech, I put that momentarily on the back burner because I had such a rage about the way these people reveled in glee over the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And I was struck by your admonition on that very issue that you posted recently about how we have to be very, very careful not to engage on the far other extreme and perhaps overcorrect this by passing these hate speech laws or in any way suppressing speech that is constitutionally protected. And I thought that was such a timely admonition. Talk a little bit about the importance of nonetheless preserving the core right of free expression in our country.
Well, the freedom of speech, obviously, the First Amendment, speaks for itself. That's why they put it first. You got to have freedom of speech. We've got to have that. We don't need the government coming, I believe, dictating exactly what we can and can't say. But I think that what you just said a second ago resonates, and that is people have woken up. They see what is going on. We are in a battle here. There's no question about it. But it's the delusional world versus the real world. Truth versus delusion. And before, we were living in a world in the last 4 years, 5 years, or even longer, where we were all just made to shut up. And if you said anything, you were going to get fired. You were going to get canceled because the mob was going to come after you. And people simply allowed themselves to stay in the background. I think that's over. I think that's over now, because now we understand what's at stake here. If we continue to allow that, then what we're going to do is we're going to get shot. You're going to get people get killed. Charlie Kirk did not deserve what he got at all. That is horrible. And the people dancing on his grave, the people dancing on his memory, they'll be remembered by all of us. They're going to be canceled, but it's going to be because of us realizing that we have to stand for truth. That's what this show stands for. And I think that that is what the message is. Don't be afraid. Charlie Kirk was not afraid. He knew that he was being targeted. He had said that many times. He knew that there were people that hated him. But now we really see evil versus good. We really see it. And that's why it's such a shock, because now everybody understands what we're facing and how we're going to beat it. And you beat it with truth, but you don't do it with hate speech laws. That's just my opinion.
Yes.
And so we're gonna keep fighting for that.
Yes. And one of the reasons why we don't want to institute hate speech laws is because at that point, the government becomes the arbiter of what is hate speech and what isn't. And that is an extraordinarily dangerous precedent. You know, Robert Jackson, who prosecuted at the Nuremberg trial, I know you know this, Colonel Reynolds, he was a Supreme Court justice, prosecuted. He said, when you violate the constitutional, when you violate core due process, even for these atrocious Nazi war criminals, when we do not give them due process, a trial, and a conviction, we are creating a poison chalice that ultimately will reach to our own lips. And that's why I thought what you said about this, I'm sure that your overwhelming instinct as well was just to go scorched earth, was just because some of the things that I saw on this, Colonel Reynolds, were so vile, so despicable, so evil that I mean, I've seen a lot of bad things in my life, but this absolutely stunned me that these people would have given themselves so completely over to the dark side, so completely over to evil, where they are celebrating the tragic death in front of his family of a man who did nothing but express his opinion in a peaceful way and invite dialogue. That is what is so heartbreaking about this.
It is extremely heartbreaking. I agree with you. Believe me, I had the same emotions that you and probably everybody else watching this program had. Yeah, you want to go scorch earth. Your instinct says, I must destroy this enemy. I must destroy this evil. That's the instinct that we have. But we're a civil society, and we are a nation of laws. And so we have to back up a little bit, because that's why we are the greatest nation in the world. I've seen other countries, Great Britain, Germany, that are using these hate speech laws. They're starting to go down that road to restrict you saying anything. And the question is, who makes that determination? And so I think that we don't need to go down that road. And that's why I think it's important that we keep free speech, we keep our First Amendment, and we continue to speak the truth. And it doesn't mean that these people who say these things, there's not consequences. There should be consequences for their actions. All of these people who are getting fired, believe me, I don't feel sorry for them a bit.
Nope.
At all. Just because, they can say what they want, but there are consequences to that.
Very well said.
And I want to embolden these corporations and companies to do the right thing. And the right thing is you don't want people like that representing your country. Get rid of them. And so I support that. And I think that's the route that we need to take in this country.
Yeah. And that it should not be, but we have to make the distinction that it is not based upon a constitutional violation. It's based upon violation of their own protocols with respect to how people associated with those agencies or those companies are supposed to conduct themselves. And that's the basis for the action against them. It's not because of a constitutional violation. And we always have to remember that, the First Amendment to the Constitution exists not to protect the speech we like, but it exists to protect the speech that we hate, or otherwise it doesn't mean anything. So anyway, we don't need to beat this anymore, but I just was very taken by your very thoughtful post on that issue. And I thought it was very timely and it spoke to me.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And it's an important conversation to be having, because people do want to pile on. And I'm in agreement with you. We can cheer on their firings all day long, but they shouldn't be hauled off and arrested unless they're inciting violence. And to me, that's the line, right? That's the point at which it clicks over from being free speech into being something else.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
The clear and present danger doctrine. Right. Exactly. That's where it comes in.
Yep.
Colonel
I agree with
Reynolds,
you. Yeah.
with your former intelligence hat on, do you get the sense that the FBI has the right guy or is on the right track if there's some kind of bigger operation behind this 22-year-old?
I think they're on the right track. There's a lot we don't know. I mean, there's a lot of speculation out there. I think that we just need to be a little patient and allow the FBI to do the work. I have worked with many FBI agents, the ground agent. They're great people. And believe me, they want to get to the bottom of it as much as you and I do. So I don't see a bigger picture at this point. I've always said, this is strictly my opinion based on historical precedents. I said, it's probably 3 to 5 people that knew about it, involved with it. Normally, these people don't have the courage unless they're being egged on and pushed by a group. They get their strength from the group. And that's what I've seen in the past. And that's what I suspected this may be. And I suspected it was somebody from that side of the world, the transgender world or the gay world. It appeared to me that may be. The hate had to be so bad that this young man, this 22-year-old man, was willing to take that risk to kill this guy. They hated him 100%. And they were being egged on, though, by other people. The real question is, what did they know and when did they know it? It appears that some of them knew beforehand because of some of the posts that they made. Like, guess what's coming?
Yes.
It's going to be, trust me, it's going to be a big thing in the next few days. So they all had knowledge that this was, several of them apparently had knowledge that it was going to happen. Now they can always claim that they just thought it was a joke, but that's going to be for law enforcement to do a full investigation to find out. There may have been people that helped him. Who knows who wrote the messages on the bullets? Maybe each of them wrote one. I mean, who knows? So time will tell, and I think the whole story will come out. And I don't think it's going to be real long. I think you're probably talking three weeks maybe, and I think we'll probably have the full story. But that's my personal opinion.
What do you tell people, Colonel Reynolds, who have lived through, and even if they haven't lived through it, certainly understand the history of our government not being completely truthful when incidents like this happen? The JFK assassination, the COVID epidemic where we were lied to and things were covered up left and right. I think the general respect for our government now is at historic lows, particularly among conservatives. Many don't believe anything the government says. What would you say to them within the context of this investigation of Charlie Kirk, and that we can have confidence in what the government is doing?
That's a great question. And I would just say that Kash Patel was a personal friend of Charlie Kirk's. If you don't think that he wants to get to the bottom of this, I mean, I know he does. And I know that Dan Bongino, these are good people. These are people of character who are in the leadership positions. Again, there's a lot of people that work in the FBI, but I do not think for a second that they're going to somehow skew the evidence to protect anything. I think it's going to be completely transparent. I really do. Now, I would not have said that about other people. The other administrations. I mean, James Comey, there's no way in the world that anything would have been transparent. I mean, and people saw that when you saw Hillary Clinton had a server in her basement that was getting code word classified information, and she was not punished. Nothing happened to her or any of the people that worked for her. And if I had done that in the military, I would still be in jail in Leavenworth right now.
You would still be there.
But she got out, but they never went after her. That is why people lose confidence in their government when they see it right in front of them that there's a problem here. There was a law broken and that this person was given a pass. And so I understand people's anger, but I would just say that President Trump and his administration, I honestly believe, are doing everything they can with the people at the top to be transparent and trying to make sure that the people have trust in what they're doing. And so at this point, I think they have lived up to that. Regardless of the Pam Bondi thing and the Epstein and all that, you'll have a lot of that going on. I personally believe that their heart is in the right place and they're trying to do the right thing. I haven't been proven wrong yet, so we'll see what happens. But right now, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
And I didn't realize that Kash Patel had a close personal relationship with Charlie Kirk until you just said that. I didn't know that,
Yes.
which certainly militates in favor of a complete and thorough investigation into this. That gives me comfort. So we'll see what happens going forward, and whenever things develop about this going forward in the future, we definitely want to have you back on that issue, just to talk about, to give us your thoughts on it as things move forward. But I want to move for a second now, Colonel Reynolds, to the election security issue in the United States. You may not be aware of this. I know you're generally aware of what's going on down here in Louisiana. We have a Secretary of State who is absolutely obsessed with investing a massive amount of our money in electronic voting machines. And it's interesting that on the day you would come on to the State of Freedom is the day that the Dominion Voting Systems Company is doing their demonstration right here in Baton Rouge for the Secretary of State. It's supposed to be open to the public, so we'll see what happens. But she continues to insist that the Trump administration has endorsed her effort to invest $150 million in electronic voting machines. You played on your podcast not too long ago a podcast that we had produced, a clip that we had produced of Nancy Landry in the legislature talking about that. And I think we'd like to play that for you now for a minute and then get your thoughts on it once again, because I think it's critically important, your feedback on this.
Yeah, let me play it now.
Disgusting. That's my first word. It's disgusting. What she said is not true. It's not true. And so she may have gotten a letter. I think that individual was talked to, because I know what the Trump administration wants. I know what the president wants, and he does not want electronic voting machines. So she can spin it any way she wants. It is not what the president wants, and it's not what the administration's stance is. I can tell you that. I know that for a fact, and it's going to be coming out. In fact, if you just go back and look at the executive order, the one that was signed on the 25th of March of this year, 248, which was very clear that they're trying to get rid of any machines that have QR codes or barcodes. All of these machines that she's talking about have that. He specifically said none of that is going to be allowed. It has to be with the VVSG, which is the voting guidelines, voluntary voting guidelines 2.0. None of these machines at all in America can meet that standard. Right now, what she's telling you is not true. It is fabrication. Apparently, she wants to spend $150 million of your dollars. Now, let me tell you what's going to happen. What's going to happen in the next few weeks? It's going to be absolutely 100% clear that they cannot have these machines. So she better not sign any contract that is going to obligate the taxpayers of Louisiana buying any machines, because they're not going to be able to be used in any federal election. That's going to happen. I 100% believe that. And so,
do you have that on? Is that Colonel Reynolds? Let me press down on that a bit. Do you have that based on your gut instinct, or do you have that based on intelligence?
Well, I will tell you that we've worked. Bill Huff and myself, and of course, we represent the American Voter Integrity Initiative. We have worked hard with the administration and with certain people to get things to the president, language that would go into a new executive order. And we've been doing this since February. The idea, of course, is that we want to get ahead of some of the people who are like Landry, who are trying to make it look like they can use these machines. To answer your question, yes, I know that this is what they're looking at. There's going to be an executive order come out. All you have to do is look at what the president put out about 3 weeks ago in his post, his truth post. Did you see that? Well, he was very clear. He said, I'm going to lead the effort, and I want the Republican Party is going to we're going to lead the effort, and we're going to get rid of these mail-out votes, and we're going to get rid of machines. He was very clear on that. That was just 3 weeks ago. So how does that square with what she's saying now? It's ridiculous. He is not supportive of her position at all. And let me ask you this. There's a big resistance to what the president's trying to do in the Republican Party. Okay. And so how do I know that? Tell me one Republican governor or one Republican senator or representative that has come out and said, I support the president. Not one. Not
why
one.
do you Colonel Reynolds, why is
That is, well, it could be the $64,000 question. I can give you my opinion. And my opinion is that over the last 20 years, these voting machine companies have captured the state legislatures and the governors. For whatever reason, they're very scared. I've had several conversations with congressmen and women on Capitol Hill, and I brought this very thing up. I've said, look, you can cut all the funding right now with Doge. You could cut all the funding for the machines. And I was told that, well, these machine companies have a lot of power here on Capitol Hill. That's what I was told by a sitting congresswoman, right? So think about that for a second. They know that they're very powerful. They know if they go up against them, they may lose. Why is that? Why do they think that? It's because, in my opinion, these machines can be manipulated. They know it. They know it can be. They just know if they play the game, they'll stay in office. If they don't play the game, they won't. That's my opinion. So
what if the alternative?
What if the
alternative theory, Colonel? What if the alternative theory to that, though, is that the reason why they're hesitant is because they're being funded, they're being financially enriched by these companies?
Well, we know that these companies they underwrite the Secretary of State's organization. And they underwrite them. They all go in for a big, conference. Their gold and platinum sponsors are these machine companies. We know that. We also know that they are very active at the county level. They also use a thing. Some of these reasons these states are not fighting as much is that you have a thing called the Association of Counties. Do y'all have that in Louisiana? We have one in here in Arkansas. It's called the Association of Arkansas Counties. There is a National Association of Counties in Washington, D.C., and they leverage that because they have an umbrella organization for the Association of County Clerks, Association of Sheriffs, Association of whatever, and they help fund a lot of the things at the county level. And so they're voluntary. For example, we have 75 counties in Arkansas. Every county in our state belongs to this association. And the motto is, 75 counties, one voice. So they basically are a 501c3 that have inserted themselves into the fact that they control these counties. They control them financially. When we were trying to get paper ballots in one of our counties, the Associated States came out and threatened them and said, if you vote to go to paper ballots, we are going to ensure that we're not going to help you on any grants for your bridges, for your roads, federal grants. We're not going to help you with any of that. So the counties are scared to death. Yeah. Well, they don't want to do it. So they're using all of these tools to leverage and bully and push counties to use these machines that most of them don't even want they don't want them. So we understand the only way out of this is to get rid of the machines. It can be done today. And we've told the president about this. This can be done today. Right now, we have the ability to say, under current existing law, that these machines do not meet the law because they have foreign parts in them.
Yes.
You have critical infrastructure that was brought into all the electronic equipment in elections are considered critical infrastructure. And that was done by President Obama in January of 2017. Fast forward, you go to 2019, there was an executive order that President Trump signed that basically said any critical infrastructure that has foreign parts, electronic parts in them, that are made by foreign adversaries, China, Russia, cannot be used. Cannot be used. The Secretary of Commerce, Harold Lutnick, right now can say these machines cannot be used in anything in elections. We could do that now. And we are encouraging the president to go down that road. Okay, he can do an executive order, but you and I both know that's going to be enjoined. It's going to be challenged. They're going to try to drag it out as long as they can until President Trump is out of office. But he doesn't have to worry about it. He doesn't have to use that. He actually can do it by current existing law. And once he does that, the states are going to have to figure out how to run an election. And we presented the president with several items that we absolutely think have to happen. And I can read them off to you. Number one, you got to use a government ID. A government-issued ID in order to prove who you are. Only U.S. citizens should be allowed to register, period. Only pre-printed, hand-marked paper ballots are authorized, no machines at all. Ballots must be hand-counted at the precinct level, no machine counting. Only paper poll books will be used during elections, no electronic poll books. You can't have that. No mass mail-outs are authorized except for overseas military, you what they call it, UCAVA, and absentee ballots. When you have a legitimate reason, that's not a problem. But we don't want mass mail-outs. Some of these states, that is a huge problem. We don't have that one in Arkansas, but it is in Arizona and a few others, Oregon. Voting locations must consist of small precincts, 1,500 to 2,000 registered voters. No vote centers anymore. And then we need to eliminate, as much as we can, early voting. We'd like to go to a one-day vote, early voting, one-day election. We'd like to do that. Some states have been able to have 2 or 3 days, like Oklahoma, they have 3 days. It's worked out very well for them. But we know that the longer you give the voting process, the more time they have to manipulate the votes. And there's going to be a book that's going to come out, and I want your listeners to hear this, called Stolen Elections. It's by Ralph Pizzulo. It's going to come out in October. It's called Stolen Elections. It is extremely important that you read this. And I think you ought to take the book down to Landry and have her read it. You will see quickly why these machines cannot be trusted. None of them.
Yeah.
And it gives you the origin. It shows you the very beginning of how all of this started and how the coding that goes into these machines was originally written and why it's still there today and all the vulnerabilities that it presents. It's really an amazing book, and I know the guys that are in it, and the guys that actually did the investigation, the guy that did some of the human intelligence work, recruiting some of the people that actually wrote the original code that's still being used in our machines today.
Yeah.
It's very important that people understand that.
Yeah.
Last
Colonel
question.
Reynolds, hold on, Chris.
Let me ask him this last question, Danielle, on this, and then we got to go on. But so Nancy Landry was specifically questioned in the Senate Governmental Affairs Committee here in the last session. Said Senator Blake McGuez said, "You are committed to the fact, I just want to make sure we have this on the record, that assuming we go forward with electronic voting machines, there's not going to be one component part in whatever machine vendor you use that is manufactured in a foreign country. Can you commit to that?" And she said yes. So my question to you, Colonel Reynolds, is there any current electronic voting system manufacturer on the market that does not derive parts from foreign countries?
There you go.
No. And all of that is going to come out. You're going to see that in the next few weeks. You're going to see, in my opinion, you're going to see a report that's going to come out that will completely document the things that I've just said. And it will be very in-depth about the vulnerabilities that these machines have, the parts that exist in them, and the fact that there's no way absolutely to know we have a fair election. There's no way. And so we have to go to a system that's completely transparent and open. And the only way to do that is a hand-marked paper ballot. All of that is hand-counted. All of the experts, and I've interviewed not all of them, but probably the vast majority of them on my show. I mean, we're talking people they're not from the same political persuasion as I am. It doesn't matter. This is not a Democrat-Republican issue. This is an American issue. We need to make sure that our vote counts and that it cannot be manipulated. But right now, we don't know that. There's selections. It appears there's selections, not elections. And so how do I know that? Is because every expert that I talked to said the gold standard is a hand-marked paper ballot that is hand-counted. And we're not doing that anywhere. And the EAC is in my mind, I got to be nice. I don't like what they do, because what they are doing is protecting the machine companies and this whole system when they really don't understand and don't really care of the vulnerabilities that exist. And so it really bothers me that the EAC is not stepping forward and making sure that these companies abide by current law and also abide by the executive order.
Right.
They've done everything to sidestep that. And so it really is infuriating to me. And believe me, you do not want touchscreen computers. There's about 6 states that use touchscreen computers for everybody and when they vote. We're one of them. Arkansas is one of them, where they've pretty much forced everybody to use a touchscreen computer that prints out a piece of paper. Okay, it's a receipt. They say, oh, that's a paper ballot. No, it's not a paper ballot, because you don't get to mark it. The machine marks it. And then we expect the people to do what is another cognitive ability, to be able to proofread, to make sure that all the names are people that they voted for. And even that can be manipulated because the tabulator that counts that piece of paper can't read English, can't read text. It can only read barcode. So how can I verify my vote as required by law, the HAVA Act of 2002? I have to be able to verify that the person I'm voting for is being counted. I can't do that if I can't read the language it's written in. I can't read barcode.
Even and Colonels, even 90% of the people who vote don't even look at the receipt when it comes out. Most people never look at it. They vote, it's over. They got to leave the piece of paper there. So even if that were the case that they could verify authentically, nobody does it.
That was scientifically proven by Professor Halderman out of the University of Michigan in Tennessee when they looked at an election. They had one. They proved that. But it is amazing that I have so many people, even here in Arkansas, we have a solid red state. We have the majority of the House legislature. We have a supermajority, both the House and the Senate. We have a Republican governor. Okay, they all are fighting me. All of them are fighting me. They would love to put me in jail for anything they can think of because they do not want to go to a hand-marked paper ballot, something the president wants. And it's been justified over and over and over. Even Tulsi Gabbard on April, I think it was the 11th of this year, in a cabinet meeting said, we have evidence that these machines can be manipulated. And there's more to come, which she said, which basically supports your mandate, Mr. President, that we go to hand-marked paper ballots that are hand-counted.
Yeah.
So that is where we're at. And I'm going to tell you right now, there are a lot of forces that are against what we're trying to do because there is a tremendous amount of money. Think about this. How much is it worth to be able to ensure you get the right number of people that are going to vote for a, $1.7 trillion omnibus bill?
That's right.
What's that worth?
Yep.
Is that worth $1 billion? Is it worth $2 billion? We don't know. You know why? Because we're not allowed to see the finances of any of these companies. They're private companies. We're not allowed to know who owns them, who their investors are. You're not allowed to know. They hide behind the corporate veil.
Yeah, and we're also not really given much insight into our elected officials' finances, for that matter, to see how, maybe we can see their campaign donations, but, the offshore accounts, I'm sure exist.
Well, and here's another one for you. Who writes the code? Who writes the code that these machines are using? And none of these companies have security clearances. None of them have any background information. Okay, I think you're going to find the answer to that pretty soon. It's going to come out who is actually, or where the code is actually written. We won't know the individual's name, but we'll know the locations. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not America. Why are we allowing this? And I think it's time that we stand up. Y'all need to tell Nancy Landry she's wrong, and you should never allow that. You should never allow any of the money being spent for any of these machines. I think that she's leaning towards, what I understand, she's leaning toward Dominion. I hope it's not true.
I hope it's not true too.
I hope none of these machines companies, and again, it's a great idea. It was a great idea, that, hey, it makes it easier on the people who are running elections, and it's very convenient. And it's going to be really hard to pry that away from the people who run elections. It'd be like saying right now, take away your iPhone and you got to go back to a flip phone. Nobody wants to do that. It's hard to do. And then when you say, well, it's a vulnerability, they say, well, you got to prove it. Show me. Well, if the system is designed in such a way that you're not going to be able to prove it, okay, the only way you prove it is when a person is standing in front of that touchscreen computer and they see it cheating. They see it flip on them. We have many statements, hundreds of statements of people. It flipped on me. Well, what is the recourse? What do? They saw the machine cheat or try to cheat, flip it, and they raise up their hand. You get a poll worker that comes over and says, how can I help you, Mr. Jones? Well, guess what? I saw it cheat. Well, it doesn't cheat. You probably hit the wrong one.
Right.
Come back over here. We'll let you vote again. Right? And we'll let you vote again. And then they print out another piece of paper out of the electronic poll book that's got a barcode on it. It goes over to the machine. You put it into it. That's a computer inside the machine. And guess what? That machine now knows that Mr. Jones is voting for the second time.
Yeah.
Is it going to mess up? Probably not. See there, Mr. Jones? No problem. And that is what we have right now. That's why we have to get rid of it. And I'm telling you, it's like pulling teeth to any of the state legislatures. They have gone after the counting. The one county, Searcy County, they have gone after them. They've gone after the 3 commissioners. They've tried to bar them for 14 years from being able to run any kind of elections based on false accusations. It's unbelievable. But I am writing a book. I'll just let you know, I'm writing a book called Duped. And Duped is going to be how the American public has been duped over the last 20 years into thinking machines are safe and computers are safe.
Yeah.
I don't know when
When's
it'll
it coming
actually be
out?
published, but it's going to be very soon. But I'm going to make it very simple so it's easy for people to get their brain around and to understand why it is that we have fallen into this trap. And, people have been trying to rig elections since the beginning of time, since there's been elections.
Of course.
They try to find ways to do that because there's a lot of money in it. There's a lot of money in it. And so, I mean, imagine the power you've got when you can run a whole state. You can tell who's going to be a senator, who's going to be a representative. That's a lot of power.
There's a lot of power in that.
And Colonel Reynolds, we see that in the state of Louisiana. I don't know if you see that in Arkansas, but the way that our legislature has kowtowed to Secretary of State Nancy Landry's every wish this past session for all the pieces of legislation she wanted passed, including silencing the voice of law-abiding citizens who want to conduct exit polls. She has run, I don't know if you can say she's run roughshod over the state legislature because she hasn't even had to, but she has certainly gotten her wish on basically every count. And my only explanation for that is she must have some power that we can't see. And maybe I'll just make a small commercial for listeners in Louisiana right now that we hosted Draza Smith last week on Tuesday, and she showed us evidence of in Ouachita Parish how the election had been controlled and manipulated based on her analysis of the data. And her analysis of the data was only from early voting. So this is the commercial for people. In Louisiana, we have tablets. Well, at least in my parish, we have these tablets. I only recently learned that these tablets are actually leased. We don't even own them. We are leasing them. I don't know. That seems super wrong to me on I can't even count how many levels, but we're leasing these tablets and you press, the red button or the blue button, and that's how you vote. Well, I would say probably 80% maybe of our electorate votes they make early voting so easy. So that's the majority of our votes, whereas we have these old arcane machines that are probably, I'm not saying they're not manipulatable, but they're probably harder to manipulate, and they're certainly harder to manipulate in real time because of their age. So my admonition
the DREs,
to folks,
you have DREs.
Correct.
So
as of right now, Colonel Reynolds, we don't have anything. We don't even have the receipt that's not reliable, as you just explained a few minutes ago. Currently, right now, as we sit here, there is no paper element in our voting. It's all in the machines.
But let me just finish.
We used to have those. I know exactly what you're talking about. And those have been pretty much outlawed everywhere. I think you're the last state to use them. Yeah,
probably. That would check out. But my point is, with upcoming elections for parish-wide votes and for municipal votes that are coming up in October, do not do early voting. If you have to, do a mail-in ballot, an absentee ballot, and if you can at all, vote in person on the day of, because I really, truly believe that what's early voting is really just hammering us and getting us nowhere. I mean, it's getting us the opposite direction we want to go.
Well,
so that's my.
We can. There's a whole lot of talk about how we got to where we're at, and it all started back in 2000 with the presidential election with George Bush. I think the hanging chads, but they were blaming paper. It wasn't paper; it was the problem.
Yeah,
during that
it was
time
the
frame.
Machine technically.
It was the hang, but. There is a video I want you to watch if you get time. It was done by Dan Rather, and he did it in 2006. Have you seen that video?
I think we have. I think I have seen that.
We've tried to push that out to everybody to look at it, but it was the people who worked at the paper company called Sequoia, right? Sequoia Paper Company, and they made the paper for Broward County. And the paper did not meet the specifications of the kind of paper. In order to have a punch out, the paper has to have a certain tensile strength to be able to, when you hit it, it pops out. Mm-hmm. But that paper did not. That paper was done, and none of the supervisors, they all knew something was wrong. And none of them in the plant, we're talking the paper plant here, said, I'm not going to sign off on that. I don't want to have anything to do with it because something's wrong here. But the supervisors, the people who own the plant, went ahead and signed off on it and sent it anyway. And it went to Broward County, and that's where they had all the problems. And if you go back and look, they were trying to get machines in Florida, big time. And people in Florida were not having it. They weren't doing it. They had to have a crisis. They had to have a reason. And Dan Rather's report in 2006 that interviewed all of these people who worked at the plant, it is absolutely enlightening because you can look at that and go, wow, that is probably what they did. What they did is they created a crisis in order to be able to bring in machines. But I don't think that they realized that it was going to be so big, that it would affect the whole country. So they quickly got in and wrote legislation to get $4 billion. And they wrote the HAVA Act to be able to get machines in every state if they wanted them, right? They didn't force them. They just said, look, we got all this money. We'll give you new machines, make it convenient for you. And that's what they did. And so all the states then started doing it. And there was a lot of things behind the scenes. But, one of the things, do you remember the name Chuck Hagel?
Yeah.
I do.
Chuck Hagel.
Was it Nebraska? Senator from Nebraska?
Yeah, well, ES&S is in Nebraska. Chuck Hagel was a U.S. senator from there. You probably know that. And eventually became a Secretary of Defense for Obama back in 2012. When he was running for the Senate on the Republican ticket, he was running for the Senate, and he was one of four running in the Republican primary. I think it was 1996. And he won. No one even knew who he was. It was unbelievable that he won. And everybody started asking, wow, later on, do you know what his job was before he decided to run? He was the CEO of ES&S.
Wow. So he
all the
engineered
machines
his
in the
own
state
man.
who counted the votes was his former company.
Oh, my God.
So
And his
sick.
treasurer was a guy by the name of Mike McCarthy, a multi-billionaire out of Nebraska. And guess what? He's the one who owns the investment group right now that owns ES&S. But they ran
So
it.
we
And
do
so
know
guess-
who
guess-
we do know who owns. You were talking about not knowing the ownership.
We don't know
do
the
know
investors.
who owns ES&S, Colonel.
Say it's a McCarthy group, which is a financial services group, but we don't know their investors. We're not allowed to know who actually invests in the company. They only list the three major, the CEO and the current CEO, guy by the name of Burke, and then two other people, the financial service officer and then an operations guy. They list them, but they don't list all the other people who invest. They are protected by the corporate veil. They don't have to share that.
So we don't know, Colonel Reynolds, to make sure we're getting this correct. We don't know who owns these machines. The real ownership we don't know. And something we haven't mentioned yet, and I want to get your thoughts on this, we also do not have access to the actual source code inside of these electronic voting machines. At least we don't in Louisiana. The only people who have access to these source codes, which from what I'm understanding, I'm no computer guru, is a critical part of being able to determine whether there was manipulation or what exactly is going on in these votes. What are your thoughts on the fact that election officials and citizens, for that matter, do not have access to the source codes that determine and govern the entire exercise inside these machines? And yet this is one of our fundamental rights as American citizens, but we don't have access to the source codes.
Yeah, they protect that by saying it's proprietary, and these are private companies. These are private equity fund. McCarthy, I was telling you about him, it's a private equity fund, and that's what he runs, and that's what really controls ES&S. And same thing with these other companies. It's pretty much the same thing. And the code that's used is pretty much the same thing. What you're going to find, I believe, in my opinion, most of the code runs on the backbone of the original code that was developed years and years ago. And the Stolen Elections book will explain all of that, how that started and how it is pretty much the DNA of all of the current code that's used in these machines. And there's a lot of vulnerabilities in these codes that are there on purpose. It's there on purpose. As we were told by some of the engineers who originally wrote the first code, I talked to some of them, and they were very explicit that some of these vulnerabilities were designed, built in. And so it makes it to where it's possible to get into the machine, to be able to do what you need to do, and then back out of the machine. And there's no evidence that you were ever there. So when you're looking for evidence, you're not going to get it. number
So when
one.
people like Alex Haldeman say, Colonel Reynolds, that these systems can be manipulated by very sophisticated criminal cyber attackers and election officials will not even be aware that it is occurring, that's a fair statement. That's accurate.
That's completely accurate. 100% accurate. And so he knows what he's talking about. But again, I've talked to Dr. Andrew Appel, someone else who's very, he's PhD, Princeton, University of Princeton, in charge of the computer science department, another guy who also understands. In fact, I've got a letter that all of these computer cyber experts gave to North Carolina. They also did one for Pennsylvania to explain to them that the gold standard has to be a hand-marked paper ballot. That's the only way. You cannot fully secure a machine that has a computer in it. You cannot. And so here in Arkansas, and I think your audience ought to know this, they passed a law saying if you go to a hand-marked paper ballot, it's got to go through a machine first, immediately. It's got to go through a machine, and then you can do a hand count, right? Which we agreed to, even though we really couldn't fight it much. But they wanted that aspect of it going through a machine. We said, okay, fine, as long as there's 100% hand count of every race. In other words, you got to do 100% hand count. You can't go through the machine and do a spot check. And that's what they do. They do a spot check, which is basically useless. And
is that like Arkansas, a random? Is that like a risk limiting audit, Colonel Reynolds?
No, you can't do a risk limit audit on anything that has a touchscreen. You can only do a risk limit audit on a hand-marked paper ballot that you can go, and that is possible. In fact, Philip Stark, who invented risk limiting audit, is a friend of mine. He's a guy I've had on my show several times. I even brought him here to Arkansas as an expert witness. He is not a conservative. He's just an American. But he was an advisor to the EAC, the Election Assistance Commission, appointed by Nancy Pelosi, no doubt, right? So he's not, like I said, a conservative, but he agrees 100% on what we're saying. And he said, you cannot trust these touchscreens, and you cannot do a risk limiting audit at all with these machines.
Yeah.
But they misquote him. They act like you can do one when you can't. And he's very upset about that with the EAC or any other body that's trying to use his method to validate the use of these machines. He said, you can't do it.
Can't do it. Tulsi Gabbard mentioned, you go ahead, Danielle, sorry.
Sorry, my sister is a cybersecurity engineer, and she's gone to some of these big events they have in Vegas where they do the Hackers Village for voting and stuff like that. And I was just thinking as you were talking about this, that there's in the Secretary of State's office or in the Dominion office, I don't know that they have ever talked about having like a group of cyber security experts that are watching the election. These companies are getting, big companies are getting hacked every single day of the week. I believe, who was it we just had on, Chris, that told us that the Department of Defense is getting hacked over 1 million times a day.
Sean
so there's
Smith,
obviously
right?
Colonel Sean Smith.
Yep.
So just to think about the fact that we are getting hacked in every sphere that there's an opportunity to be hacked. But this one place, this one little area called elections, this is like some sacred space where there's no hacking that could possibly happen, and there's no oversight for, there's not even anyone watching to see if there is hacking happening. Is that a fair assessment? I haven't heard of anybody watching for the hacking.
No, there is none. And I think Sean Smith is 100% right, Norge. And outside hacking is a real threat to all of our election systems. But be honest with you, I'm more concerned about the insider threat.
What's baked?
I'm more concerned about inside threat of manipulating our elections. I really am. And I think
you're talking about the people, Colonel. You're talking about the people who are ostensibly administering the elections on the inside.
No, I'm talking about a process where the people who are administering elections have no clue. They just know what they've been told. They repeat everything that they've been told. We got to do a logic and accuracy test. It shows that machines are safe. They believe that. They don't have a clue what that is, but they believe it. They believe everything that they've been told by the machine companies, but they don't use critical thinking when, just like you said, why can't we see the code? Why can't we know who wrote it? Why can't we have outside groups looking at that to make sure? but they won't allow it. But yet they blow it off. They just believe what they've been told. And I believe that the vulnerabilities that exist can easily be sold. I mean, for example, if you develop a back door into a program, you can sell that to somebody. So why wouldn't we want to know who wrote it? We would want to know what country wrote it. Where's it coming from? If it's being written in Serbia, okay, as an example, if you're a Serbian and you're an engineer over there and you're writing the program, if you put in a back door that no one else knows about, and you could sell that to somebody.
Yeah.
And no one would know. And then they go, oh, well, they're not online. That has been proven to be false. And that there are other ways to communicate other than being online. We know that. And so you're going to see all this. I'm telling you, it's going to come out in the next 2 to 3 weeks. In my opinion, you're going to see all the vulnerabilities that exist, why we cannot use these machines. And there cannot be one congressman or one senator after they see this report that's going to be coming out that will show the vulnerabilities can sit there and say, well, we still want to use them anyway. If
Well,
they
they
do,
shouldn't
they
even
need to
be
be voted
allowed
out.
to sit there. Yeah, they shouldn't even be allowed to sit there because we don't have any way to verify that they were put there legally in the first place.
So
Well, again,
exactly.
they say they're
exactly.
If they say they're air gapped, they're not air gapped in the sense that we're talking about. I mean, okay, there are many countries that think that their systems are air gapped, but we were able to destroy. You got thumb drives that go in every one of these things, right? So there are many other ways to communicate that have not been revealed yet, but you will find out probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And I think it's important that people understand that when you have a machine between the voter and the final count, you can never be assured that your vote was counted. You can never be assured. And so this idea that we can, for convenience sake, is ridiculous. And we must reject that. And any Secretary of State who says you got to do that, we're not going to do hand counts, well, then you need to quit. You need to resign. Because we did it for 200 years. I think we can do it again.
Yeah.
And that's just the cold, hard facts of this matter. And so,
Colonel, when they come out, when what you say is coming out, when it comes out in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and every election official, every Secretary of State in the country, and everybody who is playing in this field sees this, if they continue to push for this, does that rise to the level of malfeasance in office?
yeah, because they're going to be given, not only the evidence, they're going to be given a direct order that you can't use these machines in federal elections for sure. Now what? You're going to run 2 parallel elections? You're going to use machines that have been proven to be untrustworthy?
So assuming, Colonel Reynolds, that we have not actually invested this $150 million in these machines, when this order comes out, when this information comes out, at that point, Nancy Landry, I don't think she has plausible deniability even at this point because of what people like you and so many others have been saying. But clearly she would have no plausible deniability at that point to go forward with this investment.
That's correct. And it's a misuse of taxpayer money. 100% misuse of taxpayer money. Now, let there be no doubt here. We have a national emergency. That's what this is. And we are encouraging the president to declare a national emergency right now on this issue. Because if we don't get this right, I'm telling you, the midterms are not going to be good. And we need to fix it right now. I mean, we only have a few weeks. We don't have months. We don't have years. We have weeks, maybe a few weeks that we have in order to get this done, because states have to prepare to be able to have a primary. Probably, the earliest primaries are, I think, the 3rd of March when they first start out, and people early vote starting in February. We need to fix this now. And so I think that the national emergency that I just talked about, I think that you're going to hear more about here very shortly.
You said, Colonel, that there's a real concern about Venezuelan foreign interference in our elections. I think you said something recently about it, and I think you discussed it recently. Considering that, and also Tulsi Gabbard's statement recently that there has been foreign interference in our elections and that these electronic voting systems are highly manipulable. How does that tie to Venezuela? Who specifically is doing the manipulation in these electronic voting systems?
Right. Well, the key about Venezuela, and again, you're gonna read about it, read the book, Stolen Elections. You'll see how all of that got started. You'll understand how that plays into our current election system. Again, when you develop the prototype, you develop the DNA, the type of coding that is required in order to be able to manipulate machines. That is the genesis of it. That's where it started, and it moved on to other companies. And that is what you're going to see. Venezuela is important because it's the one country that actually used it and started it and developed it. And then it branched out and it went to other companies. It went from Smartmatic to Sequoia to Dominion and then to ESNS. And all of these companies, again, tend to use what appears to be the very same type of manipulable coding that can be altered, that can be changed. One of the ways you can get around this, by the way, is if you have a hand-marked paper ballot that a person actually marks. We know that 99% of voter intent is captured on a hand-marked paper ballot. Maybe 1% makes a mistake, but most people recognize if they've made a mistake on a paper ballot. If you hand count it, then you're going to be able to determine. In other words, we know that's the best way. That's the way to do it. And so a hand-marked, hand-counted paper ballot is the gold standard. It has to be done in every state. I guess that's pretty much where. And Venezuela and all the machine companies, they've built their model on this coding that was initially designed in Venezuela, and it's kind of like a cancer. It's gone to all three of them. There's a lot more here to it. I could spend hours explaining all of this to you, but I will just tell you, have hope. Your viewers need to have hope. I think it's going to come out without question, so that everybody is on the same sheet of music. You can't really argue the facts that will be presented. And people like your Secretary of State, she will be a fool to buy machines after this comes out. And she should be prohibited. I mean,
that's what I was going to say.
Should be saying, no way are you going to spend our taxpayer money now that we already know what we know.
Yeah. And Colonel, the recent actions by the Department of War off the coast against Venezuela, do you think those have anything to do with elections, or do you think that they are actually specifically targeting fentanyl traffickers, drug traffickers?
I think the two things could be true. I think that the drug trafficking is very important. That particular country has gone to a narco terrorist type government who've captured that government, the legitimate government. And I think that a calculated decision is being made as we speak on what to do with Venezuela. But it is a narco regime, make no mistake. And we know that. And I think that's why the harsh actions are coming out right now. I don't know what the future plans are going to be for Venezuela, but if I were a betting man, I would say that things are going to change in Venezuela for the good for the people of Venezuela here very shortly.
Amen. I pray it's true.
I hope so. I don't know how much more time we have, but I would like to talk a little bit about, if we got a second here, about Heritage Foundation.
Yes, please.
Because I think that this is something that really bothers me because I like the Heritage Foundation. I think they've done some great things, and I think that they are a conservative organization. They've proven their value over the years. But one area that I don't have a lot of confidence in is their scorecard, the scorecard that they give for election integrity. And people say election security. It's not security at all. They're not looking at the secure nature of any of these machines. What they're looking at is each state and the laws that each state have in order to conduct elections. That's what they're looking at. And it started in 2021. That was the first scorecard that came out. And it's done by Hans von Spassky is his name. I'll just call him Hans. He's a long-time election guy, been around many, many, many years. He came up with the scorecard, but the problem I have with it is that the very first year, the very state that got number one out of 50 states, number one, you know which state that was?
Was it Arkansas?
Georgia.
Excellent.
They got number one. Out of all the problems we saw with Georgia, they got number one. And your state has always been in the top 10 with all of the problems you have with DREs.
Crazy. Yeah.
Crazy.
So
it makes no sense. But yet in our state, we've been putting a lot of pressure on our state legislature and our governor. And guess who's number one this year? Arkansas. And then they made a big deal out of it. They came on TV, said we're number one, election integrity, election insecurity, trying to thwart our effort to get paper ballots here.
Colonel, how do you do a comprehensive evaluation of the security of a voting system that is an electronic-based voting system when you don't even have an IT expert on your staff? I heard last night that Heritage Foundation right now is trying to find an IT expert. How do you rank a voting system in a state that is centered on electronic systems when you've done no evaluation of that electronic system and you don't even have an IT personnel on your staff?
And I'll piggyback on that and say they're looking at laws on the books, but how many of our states completely ignore the laws that are on the books? So they mean nothing.
I agree. And if you look at it, they base everything on a 40-page or 40 questionnaires or 40 questions. And that's basically what it is. And, do you do this? Do you require ID? They don't ask you, do you require government ID? Like in Arkansas here, you have to have an ID. Okay, but guess what? It can be a university ID going to a college year. You could be a foreign student going here and have an ID, but that's what they have. Okay, and just it serves a purpose, but not the purpose that they are claiming. And it appears to me it gives cover. It gives cover to the states that are having pushback, and they want to keep the machines there. And that's a problem. Okay, because as soon as I come out and say something, they go, we're number one on the Heritage, most conservative think group in Washington, D.C., and we are perfect. They say we're great. So then you have to argue that from another side instead of saying, no. And then I have to explain. There's 40 questions, and here they are. And this is what people, they tune out. They hear the soundbite. We're the number one out of all 50 states. So it is a way to give cover, I believe. And so we're going to try to address that at some point soon. But we learned early on, and I told President Trump that we've decided we cannot push strings from the bottom. We have to pull them from the top. It has to come from the presidential level. And if we don't get it done now with President Trump there and the other people in his cabinet, whether it's DHS or DOJ or ODNI, we're never going to get it done. So we think that this is the window of opportunity, and maximum pressure has to come out on all of these governors and these secretary of states to get rid of the machines. And that's what we plan on doing.
100%.
You've already answered the question, Colonel, about what we could expect coming out in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I was going to ask you about that, but that's very, very comforting to know that we should be getting something in the next 2 or 3 weeks on this in the form of an EO. Also looking forward to reading your book on this.
It's great. It's a great book. I'm telling you, it'll knock your socks off. But anyway, it'll come out later.
Well, you have to just be in touch with us, and we'll have you back on to preview the book when you're ready to publish.
I would love to.
Can I ask you one last question on this?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea, Colonel Reynolds, if one of the questions on the Heritage Survey form is whether or not your state requires proof of citizenship when an individual is applying to register to vote?
I do not think so.
Okay.
I have to go back and look at it, but I don't think so. There's no requirement for that. In fact, the executive order that President Trump put out in March of this year asked the form to be changed to have, say, you're a U.S. citizen. And they got pushback from the EAC, and it was sued. They were sued, and that's still in court right now. They've been enjoined by several organizations that sued, saying you can't do that. It has to be done. And I think that will get done. That's my personal opinion.
Because there's a law on the books right now in Louisiana that was passed in 2024, and it's been effective in Louisiana since January of this year to require any person who's trying to vote or applying to register to vote to provide some proof that they are an American citizen. It is current law in Louisiana, and it's a law that our Secretary of State, by her own admission, is not enforcing here. And so is there a federal statutory issue as to why she would not be able to enforce that here?
Don't know. I'm not an attorney, so I would not want to try to answer that. But I think that you're going to find the citizenship requirement, I think, is going to be upheld. And I think that's what's going to happen nationwide. Only U.S. citizens are supposed to be voting. And we know that in many of these other states, they're simply not U.S. citizens that have voted. They've registered, and there's no way to kick them off the voter rolls. And so the voter rolls are another issue. But the one that we're focused on right now are the 8 things that I just mentioned before. I think it's very important. If we get that, we're 99% there on having safe and secure elections. And I'm going to tell you something else, that if we get this in now, which is what we're trying to do, and we've tried to impress upon the administration that it's important that we do this before primaries start, because that way we can get rid of all of these rhinos that are simply not listening to the people. You can get rid of them. Now they're on a level playing field. They can't rely upon some type of manipulation to keep them in. And so that's why we're really forcing it and trying to push it.
Yeah.
So, pray for us that we're successful, because it's our country has to have it.
Yeah.
So many questions, Colonel, that we want to ask you. This really will be the last one, okay? This really will be the last one. But I got to ask you, do you care to speculate? And I know perhaps you don't have absolute proof of this. How many elected officials in our country, state level, national level, do you think may be there who were not legitimately elected but were selected?
I have no idea. And that's the problem. We have no idea. And you'll never know. You'll never know. You'll never know who was selected, who wasn't. You won't. We do know that most of your primaries are the ones that are being manipulated in solid red states and solid blue states. That's where the manipulation comes in. Here in Arkansas, I think last year was the first year they, quote, did an audit of the primary. They've never done an audit of the primary until we brought it up and started making an issue out of it. But what they do is in our general election, they'll take one race, usually the presidential or the governor's race. And that is then they'll look at 8 to 20 counties, and they'll go in, and it's a spot check. It's like going into a bank and getting one teller drawer and looking at the $1 bills and counting and say, oh, they're all here. We're all good. That's what it's equivalent to. It's ridiculous. And they know, for example, in Arkansas, the presidential election wasn't going to be manipulated. Trump was going to win. He won 65% or so. They knew that was never, and Sarah Huckabee's race would never be manipulated. They never look at any of the other races. They never look at any of the primaries. And so what I've also noticed was a trend by the parties, particularly in our state, the Republican Party, to ensure that there's no primary, there's nobody running against an incumbent. They do everything they can to make sure, or their preferred person that they want, they make sure other people drop out for some reason. They drop out at the last minute, or they run for another office. That is what we've seen. So it's very clear to me what's going on. And the way to defeat it is just go to paper ballots and just hand mark paper ballots. And then it's a level playing field. And then you know for sure. And so, and I think that anybody else will tell you that. The other thing I want you to know, and I'll throw this out there, is that we did a poll in Arkansas in October 2023 that showed that 63% of all Arkansans want paper ballots. They don't trust machines. 3%. It was 73% of all Republicans that wanted it, right? And then they did a nationwide, Rasmussen did a nationwide poll a few months ago, which had the same statistics. How do I know those statistics are true? Well, last November, Independence County, the second county in Arkansas that wanted to go to paper ballots, they were actually able to get a petition, people signed, to get it on the ballot to be able to vote on it. They were the first county in America that we know of that actually voted on whether they want to use machines or they wanted to use a paper ballot. It passed. They wanted paper ballots. You know what the percentage was?
Wow.
63% of those people. So we know that those polls were accurate because we saw it. 63% of the people there wanted to do it. Brian Norris, as he's running for Secretary of State here in Arkansas, Brian Norris was the one that led that effort in Independence County to get all the signatures in that county to get it on the ballot. And he was fought tooth and nail by the county attorney, by the Republican Party. And he had to go all the way to the Supreme Court, the state of Arkansas, to get it on the ballot. That is the kind of pushback
fight we're up against.
That's what we're up against. And we're in a solid red state. So I think the president understands exactly what's going on. And I think it's important for everybody to know that.
Yeah. Well, Colonel Reynolds, where can people follow you and where can they learn more about your paper ballot initiative?
Go to avii.org, avii.org. And you can go in there, and we have a lot of great reading material. And everything that I've learned over the last 3 years, and I've studied, read everything I can, I've learned that All of this has been out there for years, for decades, but nobody wants to listen to it because it's not convenient and it's not popular.
Convenient. Yes.
It's not convenient. And that is the problem that we have right now.
Yeah.
So you can also go to at Colonel Reynolds on X. I'm there. And so you can find me on X if you want to at Colonel Reynolds.
Awesome. Thank you.
One of the most amazing, one of the most refreshing things and uplifting things to me about this conversation today is that I'll walk away from this with no doubt at this point that the Trump administration is fully aware of what's going on here because you and others have communicated it to them. I've had this lingering suspicion in the back of my mind that maybe President Trump and some of his officials close to him are not fully aware of the magnitude of the issue or even the specific details of the issue here. But I'm reassured based on this interview with you that they are, in fact, aware fully of what's going on here. And that gives me a lot of heart and a lot of consolation.
They're aware, and the president is on the same sheet of music that we are.
Yeah.
Absolutely have no doubt about that.
Yeah, in large part because of you, I'm sure. So God bless you for joining us today, Colonel. Keep up this good fight. You got a lot of people following you and inspired by you, including us right here in Louisiana at the State of Freedom. So
That's right.
Many thanks to you, sir.
And I want to leave, make sure you vote. One way you know for sure your vote doesn't count is if you don't go vote.
That's
So
right.
I don't want to discourage anybody from not voting. I want you to vote. That's why I served 30 years on active duty, another 15 years as a contractor for the U.S. government to fight for our country, for your right to be able to have a say in this country. And the only way you get that is through a vote. Okay? That's why we're fighting for it.
Amen.
Amen.
God bless you, Colonel. We'll
All
be
right.
talking to you soon.
Thank you, sir.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Let me tell you something, Danielle.
Hold on, Chris. Don't forget about our ad.
No, I'm not. I just have to tell you, we're going to the ad, but I have to tell you this first. That was the clearest explanation of what is really going on here that I think we've ever heard. Drysa Smith, she communicated well, but it was very, very technical. And I thought that this was a little bit simpler explanation that the Colonel gave us that really helps me, and I know a lot of others, to understand really what's going on here in these machines. So we'll talk more when we get back. I know we have our affiliate sponsors, a word from them, but don't go anywhere because we're going to debrief a little bit when we get back.
The secret to losing weight 2 times faster has gone viral. See the transformations hundreds of thousands of men, women, and teens are experiencing around the world with the Slender Eyes drops. These homeopathic hormone balancing drops are proven to control appetite, support thyroid function, improve energy, boost mood, and increase metabolic rate. To learn more about the drops or other incredible natural wellness and lifestyle products, email me at danielle@freedomstate.us or visit the Shop Our Partners page at freedomstate.us. All right, perfect. All right. Well, I really enjoyed talking to the Colonel. I had not, it's almost surprising that we haven't had him on before.
I know. What a jewel. What a treasure he is. It's just, it's extraordinary to me how what appears so clear and so obvious to everybody except the institutional bureaucrats and the politicians and these machine vendors.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. I appreciate the level of thorn in the side he has committed to being to the politicians in the state of Arkansas. And I think we're committed to the same level of being, a great irritant to them until they bend to the will of the people.
yes, and I've been an irritant at many points in my life to many people, but I have never derived quite this degree of satisfaction from being an irritant as I am on this issue because it's so very, very important, Danielle. And as you've said so many times, if we don't get this right, and as the Colonel said today, if we don't get this right, then we really don't have a republic because we will not have the capacity to elect the people who truly serve us. And that's why
right.
this is so important. And I have to say this one more time. I am so gratified by what Colonel Reynolds said about what is going to be forthcoming from the Trump administration on this issue. And hopefully it will be very clear and clarify exactly what's going on here. I mean, he suggested that what's coming out, if Nancy Landry goes forward after that and invests $150 million in voting machines, that really it's malfeasance in office for her to do that, because at that point she's got zero plausible deniability. None.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Although, like you said, she should have none now if she is not completely stone deaf, because the voice of the people has been screeching about this issue since before she even took office, right? When she sat in the Secretary of State's office, not as the elected Secretary of State or selected Secretary of State, however you might want to view it, but she's known that we, the people, are unhappy with the state of our elections. She's known that we don't trust the machines, and there's only excuses for that. A couple things I want to mention, Chris. 2 to 3 weeks from now, let's just say by the end of the first week, the first full week of October, that would be 2 to 3 weeks from now, we could on the far side. So I pray that that's the case. The other thing I wanted to mention is, could you just bring out, Colonel Reynolds was talking about the statistics of people who wanted paper ballots versus machines. Wasn't Secretary of State Nancy Landry talking about some statistics that didn't have any backup to them at
Yes.
a recent meeting you were at? I'd
Yes.
love for you to bring that out.
And I didn't have a chance to bring it up during the show, but it definitely popped into my head. So Nancy Landry is going around touting her poll or whatever that was done that shows that 90 or 91% of Louisiana citizens don't want to go to secure paper ballots and then want to continue voting on machines. So at a recent meeting, Christy Hike and I and others questioned her on that, and very respectfully, Secretary Landry, could we get access to this poll? Who conducted it? I mean, could we look at the poll and see the demographics, who was polled, whatever? We'd like to see it. 91%. Wow, that's pretty high. Well, her response was, well, we just saw the poll. We don't have the poll. We just looked at the poll. And so nobody knows where this poll is. Nobody knows who conducted this poll. And nobody can have access to it to look and see what type of poll it was, whether it was skewed based on the demographic that was polled, whatever. So yet she's going around saying that 91% of citizens in Louisiana want machine-based voting.
There's
I
no
think
poll.
it's despicable. There is no poll.
Come
Of
on.
course there's
Yeah.
no poll.
I certainly wasn't reached out to give my opinion in that poll. Were you?
You would have been among the quote 9% who didn't want it. Yeah, it's just an absolute joke. And the last thing I'll say, Danielle, is this: I know that Nancy Landry is doing everything within her power to come across as a stoic, staid, perfectly satisfied, public official who knows what she's doing, confident going forward. I guarantee you that's not the case. I guarantee you that she is feeling the heat. She's not going to tell people that she's feeling the heat. People who are close to her are not going to tell people that she's feeling the heat, but she's feeling the heat. And I can promise you she is. And it's because of people like Colonel Reynolds, people like us here on the State of Freedom, and people everywhere who are continuing to beat the drum on this issue. And I would encourage everyone to continue doing so.
And Chris, they can do that by going to LACAG.org, and you have some calls to action up, right, on
Absolutely.
opposing the voting machines.
Yes. And that reminds me, Danielle, that not only do we have hundreds, maybe even thousands at this point, of direct communications to the governor and the Secretary of State on secure hand-marked paper ballots, and We the People by You community, your group, has
Yeah.
well over 3,000 handwritten letters signed letters that have gone to the Secretary of State on this issue. 3,000. And
And
yet
you know how many have been responded to or acknowledged receipt of?
big fat zero.
That's correct.
Big fat zero, which to me is extremely disappointing. I'm simply hoping that at some point, because of the 3,000 letters, because of all the emails that have gone from LACAG, and because of what Colonel Reynolds is coming out in the form of an executive order, I view that as the functional equivalent of a megaphone that if you turn the decibel level up high enough, you can actually make Nancy Landry hear it, even down in, under the 2 or 3 feet hole of sand in which she has her head buried, that
Yeah.
maybe she'll be able to hear it down in there. And I think if it's a loud enough megaphone, she'll be able to hear it, because right now she's determined not to hear anything that is inconsistent with her narrative, which is terrible for this state.
Yeah, it is. It
Yeah.
absolutely is. And like we said before the show, Chris, the way you know that your elected officials are not working for you is the fact that they are not listening to you.
They're absolutely not listening. It doesn't mean they're not hearing. It doesn't mean they're not hearing. They're just not listening. But as we continue forward with the state of freedom, Danielle, we're going to continue to beat the drum on this issue. I know in your view, and in my view at this point, it is the single most important issue we face in our state. We're going to continue moving forward, and the state of freedom is determined to continue to expand our voice so that every citizen in the state of Louisiana knows about the state of freedom and can listen to our podcasts and be informed about what really is going on. I don't believe you're going to get, for instance, I don't believe you're going to get what we got today on any other podcast in the state. You're just not going to get the truth like this anywhere else, and not just on this issue, but on many, many other issues. So I can't emphasize enough. Please subscribe, please share, please donate to the State of Freedom, and please advertise on the State of Freedom, because I can assure you, if Danielle and I believe in something, whether it's your product, whether it's your vision, your idea, nobody will be able to sell it, promote it, if we believe in it better than this show right here. So give us a shot. Our rates are very reasonable. Give us a shot to advertise for you, and we think you're going to be pleased with the results.
That's right. And also support the work of LACAG. I know that your fearless partner, Katie, is already at the Dominion voting demonstration. And along with many other patriots from across the state, I hope that they are being maybe vocal in their displeasure. I hope that the Secretary of State is there and witnessing some great displeasure from, we the serfs, the villagers, the peasants, as she probably views us.
Right, the peasants. Look, I've never been so honored. I've never been so honored to be called a peasant. I mean, that means we're on the right side speaking the truth, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we are speaking the truth. And just a couple of announcements before we go, Chris. I know you are heading off to the Dominion demonstration after we get off of this, so thank you for going and representing us there alongside Katie and many others. Tomorrow, a reminder, we will be back, or I will be back at least at 10 a.m. Central on For the Love of Freedom. I'll be joined by some dear friends, Stephen and Candace Crothers. They are missionaries to a remote village in Honduras. We'll be talking about how they have followed God to the ends of the earth. And then Thursday, Chris, you'll be back here with me. We will be joined by Dr. Mary Talley Bowden to talk about the MAHA agenda's progress and will we ever see accountability for COVID? So great stuff coming up this week. We hope to see you back here, same time, same place.
God bless you. Keep marching forward to victory, Danielle. And as you always say, we are not proceeding toward victory. We are proceeding from a victory ultimately that has already been won for us. And as long as we are faithful instruments, we will consummate all of our efforts in a powerful, powerful, long-standing victory that is going to affect not only us now, but the next generation. And that ultimately is what it's all about, what we leave to our kids and our grandkids. And
That's
it
right.
makes this fight so very worth it. So God bless you, Danielle. Love you. And we will reconvene soon. And inveighing, we shall go.
Yep. God bless you, Chris.
You too.
Hey, Danielle Walker here. I'd love for you to check out my online boutique, Luxe Lion. My mission for Luxe Lion is to showcase innovative African designers and sustainable mission-driven brands. To do that, I bring you stunningly beautiful handcrafted jewelry and accessories from some of my absolute favorite places on earth. Small batch wholesale for storefronts is also available. Join me in celebrating African artistry and shop now at luxelion.us. Use promo code FREEDOM for an additional 10% off your purchase. Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Be sure and check out the show notes for this episode. You can always go there and find the calls to action and resources mentioned in the show, and you can find out more information about our advertisers there as well. If you want to learn more about us or support our work, visit freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit LACAG.org. We'll see you next time. God bless.